The Georgia sun beat down mercilessly on the pristine greens of Augusta National Golf Club during the final practice day before the Masters tournament. Shane Lowry, the beloved Irish golfer with his trademark beard and infectious smile, was focused intensely on perfecting his swing. The pressure was mounting. He hadn't won a major since his triumphant Open Championship victory in 2019, and whispers of a slump were beginning to circulate among sports commentators. As Shane walked between holes, wiping sweat from his brow, his caddy nudged him gently. "Shane, someone's been waiting to see you all day." He pointed toward a small gathering near the rope. Among the crowd stood a frail boy in a wheelchair, no more than 12 years old, holding a hand-painted sign that stood out vividly against the sea of tournament merchandise. "Shane, one wish before my final round." Something in the boy's eye, a mixture of hope and determination seemed to defy his physical condition, made Shane break protocol. He walked over, crouched down, and introduced himself to Ethan Reynolds, a golf-obsessed young fan from Baltimore who had been battling an aggressive form of leukemia for 3 years. Ethan's parents stood nervously behind the wheelchair, their expressions a complex mixture of gratitude and heartbreak. "I've watched every tournament you've played since I got sick," Ethan said, his voice surprisingly strong despite his fragile appearance. "Mom says I've got 2 months left, maybe 3. I have one wish, but I can only tell you in private." The request hung in the air between them. Shane glanced at his schedule, at his waiting coach, at the tournament officials hovering nearby, then back at Ethan's hopeful face. In that moment, something shifted in the professional golfer's priority. "Tell your parents I'd like to speak with them," Shane said quietly, resting his hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Some wishes are worth breaking the rules for." Cheat. What Shane didn't know as he arranged to meet the Reynolds family later that evening was that Ethan's wish would challenge not only his professional boundaries, but also reawaken painful memories he'd spent years trying to forget. The hotel suite felt uncomfortably formal for such an intimate conversation. Shane sat across from the Reynolds family. Mark, a construction supervisor with calloused hands that fidgeted constantly. Sarah, a kindergarten teacher whose smile never quite reached her tired eyes. And between them, Ethan, wrapped in a blanket. Despite the warm evening, his Baltimore Ravens cap covering what Shane assumed was hair loss from treatment. "The doctors at Johns Hopkins gave us the final prognosis last week," Mark explained, his voice catching. "We've tried everything. 3 rounds of chemo, experimental treatments, even a bone marrow transplant last year. Nothing's working anymore." Sarah reached for a tissue. "Ethan has a bucket list. We've been working through it. Disney World, meeting his favorite Ravens player, swimming with dolphins in Florida." She glanced at her son with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "But this wish, the one he wants from you, he wouldn't even tell us what it is." Shane turned to Ethan, who seemed suddenly shy, perhaps overwhelmed by actually being in the presence of his hero. "It's okay, but whatever it is, you can tell me." Ethan looked up, gathering his courage. "I want you to teach me how to play one perfect hole of golf. Not just any, the 12th at Augusta. And," he hesitated, "I want my dad to caddy, and I want you to film it, so when I'm gone, they'll have something to remember that isn't just hospital sick day." The simplicity and depth of the request stunned Shane into silence. Of all the things the boy could have asked for, memorabilia, video messages from multiple players, VIP tournament access, he wanted one perfect golfing memory with his father. "That's Amen Corner," Shane said finally, referring to one of the most famous and challenging stretches in golf. "It's not exactly easy, even for professionals." "I know," Ethan said, with unexpected determination. "That's why it has to be that one. Because it's hard, and because it's beautiful, and because they say it's where champions are made or broken. I may never grow up to be a champion, but I want to know what it feels like, just for one day." As Ethan spoke, Shane was transported back to County Offaly, Ireland, to his own childhood, to the early mornings practicing with his father before school, to the promise he'd made to his late brother after the accident. A promise he'd kept professional had somehow lost the heart of along the way. "I'll need to make some calls," Shane said, already mentally calculating the impossibility of getting private access to Augusta National during tournament week. "It's going to break about a dozen rules." "We understand if it's too much," Sarah began, but Shane cut her off gently. "I didn't say I wouldn't do it, just that it's going to take some doing." He looked directly at Ethan. "A promise is a promise, and this one mattered." What Shane didn't share was how much this request had shaken him. or that he'd just committed to something that could potentially jeopardize his participation in the tournament he'd spent months preparing for. Dawn broke over Augusta National like a watercolor painting, pinks and oranges bleeding into a crisp blue sky. The administrative offices were already buzzing with activity when Shane arrived, his reputation gaining him access, but not necessarily the favor he was about to ask. "Absolutely not," said Howard Mitchell, the tournament director, before Shane had even finished explaining. "We're 3 days from the Masters. The course is being prepared to exacting standard, and you want to bring a child." "A dying child," Shane interrupted, something he rarely did with authority figure. "Onto the 12th hole for a private golf lesson?" Mitchell continued. "Do you know how many special requests we decline daily? From former presidents, from celebrities, from our own members?" Shane leaned forward. "I understand the position I'm putting you. But this isn't about me, and it's not about bending rules for privilege. This is about a 12-year-old boy who won't see 13. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Shane called in every favor he'd accumulated in his career. He offered to withdraw from the tournament if necessary, an offer that stunned even himself as he made it. Finally, a compromise was reached. 1 hour on the 12th hole, at daybreak the following morning, before the grounds crew began their work. No publicity, no social media, minimal personnel. When Shane called the Reynolds family with the news, Ethan's excited voice on the speakerphone made the battle worth it. What he didn't tell them was that he'd spent the afternoon pulling strings for something else, reaching out to fellow golfers, tournament officials, and even a few of Ethan's favorite Ravens players. If this was going to be one of Ethan's last perfect days, Shane was determined to make it truly perfect. That night, alone in his rental house, Shane pulled out an old, worn photograph. Himself as a teenager with his arm around his younger brother Patrick, both holding golf clubs and grinning widely. It was taken 3 months before the car accident that took Patrick's life. Shane had promised at the funeral that he would play for both of them, that he would make it to the heights they'd dreamed of together. "I think you'd like this kid, Patty," he whispered to the photograph. "He's got your kind of courage." Shane barely slept that night, partly from anxiety about the logistics of the morning, partly from the realization that somewhere along his journey to professional success, he'd lost touch with why he loved the game in the first place. It had become about rankings and endorsement, about technical perfection, rather than the pure joy he and Patrick had felt on the local course back home. Tomorrow wasn't just for Ethan, he realized. Perhaps it was also a chance for Shane to remember. Augusta National in the pre-dawn light possessed an otherworldly quality that no television broadcast could ever truly capture. The pristine fairways glistened with dew that caught the first rays of sunlight like scattered diamonds. Wisps of mist hovered above Rays Creek, giving the famous 12th hole, the heart of Amen Corner, an almost mystical appearance. The iconic bridge arched gracefully over the water, its weathered wood telling silent stories of golfing legends who had crossed it in moments of triumph and heartbreak. Shane arrived 90 minutes early, parking his rental car in the nearly empty lot. He sat for a moment, gathering his thoughts, fighting back the anxiety that had kept him awake most of the night. This wasn't just about fulfilling a child's wish anymore. It was about honoring something pure in a world that too often forgot what really mattered. From his trunk, he removed not only his own tournament clubs, but also a special package that had arrived by courier at 3 a.m. A custom set of junior clubs with the Augusta National logo emblazoned on the bag. Each club shaft carefully measured to Ethan's height from the specification Shane had quietly requested from Sarah Reynolds. Alongside this was a professional caddy bib, identical to those worn in the tournament, with Reynolds embroidered in bold letters across the back. The course superintendent met him at the service entry, his expression a mixture of reluctance and compassion. "Committee's still not happy about this," he muttered, unlocking the gate, "but sometimes rules need bending. I'll make sure everything's exactly as we found it," Shane promised. "Not a divot out of place." See that you do," the superintendent replied, but there was no real admonishment in his tone. Word had spread quietly among the staff about what was happening this morning, and even the most rule-bound among them found themselves moved by the purpose behind this unprecedented access. Shane walked the 12th hole alone in the growing light, mentally rehearsing what he would teach Ethan, how he would make this experience both educational and magical. He tested the wind, which swirled unpredictably through the pines just as it famously did during tournament play, making this particular hole one of golf's greatest challenges. He adjusted his plans, simplifying some aspects, knowing Ethan's physical limitation, while being determined not to treat him with pity rather than respect. At precisely 6:30 a.m., a tournament shuttle quietly delivered the Reynolds family to the pathway nearest the 12th tee. Shane watched from a distance as Mark helped Ethan from his wheelchair for the short walk to the tee box, Sarah hovering nearby with a nervous energy, and a medical aide following discreetly with a backpack of emergency supplies, an unwelcome but necessary reminder of the reality they all sought to temporarily escape. Ethan wore a golf shirt that hung loosely on his thin frame and a Baltimore Ravens that partially hid the hair loss from his treatment. Despite his obvious weakness, his eyes were bright with excitement as he took in the legendary setting that he had previously seen only through the filter of television broadcast. "Mr. Lowry," he breathed when he spotted Shane, sudden shyness overtaking his usual confidence. "Just Shane today," the golfer corrected gently, extending his hand formally as he would to a fellow competitor. "And you must be the famous Ethan Reynolds I've heard so much about." The boy's hand felt fragile in his grasp, but his smile was anything but weak. "This is... wow, it's even more beautiful than on TV. That's the secret they don't tell you," Shane confided, gesturing around the course. "Television flattens everything. You can't feel the elevation changes, smell the azaleas, or hear the way sound travels across these grounds." He looked at Mark and Sarah. "Thank you for sharing your son with me today." He turned to Mark, presenting the caddy bib with ceremonial gravity. Every great golfer needs a trusted caddy, someone who knows not just the clubs, but the player's heart. Mark accepted the bib with trembling hands, clearly overwhelmed. I don't know the first thing about caddying. The technical stuff I can teach in 5 minutes," Shane assured him. "The important part, knowing when Ethan needs encouragement or when he needs quiet, that's something you already know better than anyone." As Mark awkwardly donned the bib, Shane crouched before Ethan, unveiling the custom clubs. "These are sized just for you. They're waiting to make history on one of golf's most famous holes." The boy's face illuminated with wonder as he ran his fingers over the Augusta National logo, tracing the outline of America's most prestigious golf club emblem. "Are these mine to keep?" "Every great round deserves the right equipment," Shane confirmed, watching as Ethan lifted the putter with reverence. What the Reynolds family didn't know was that Shane had positioned 3 discrete cameras around the 12th hole, one on the tee box, one near the green, and one capturing the iconic bridge crossing, operated remotely by Augusta's media team as a personal favor. The footage would be professionally edited into something far beyond the shaky smartphone video Mark was currently setting up. Shane began their private lesson methodically, starting with golf fundamentals adapted for Ethan's limited strength. He demonstrated proper grip, showing how the overlapping finger position, often challenging for beginners, created stability through the swing. "Too tight, and you strangle the club," Shane explained, adjusting Ethan's fingers gently. "Too loose, and it flies away." It's about finding that perfect balance. Ethan absorbed every instruction with intense concentration, attempting to mimic Shane's stance despite his body's limitation. At one point, he stumbled slightly, fatigue already showing despite the early hour. "Take your time," Shane encouraged. "Professional golfers actually have a routine before every shot. It's not just superstition, it's about centering yourself." They progressed through each element of the golf swing, Shane constantly adapting his teaching to Ethan's capability, finding creative ways to compensate for what the boy's illness had taken from him. When Ethan struggled with his balance during the backswing, Shane improvised, positioning Mark to provide subtle support. "In tournament play, we call that a penalty," Shane joked. "But today, we're writing our own rule." After 40 minutes of instruction, they finally approached the actual tee box, the starting point for the hole that had humbled champions throughout Masters history. "This hole has seen more dreams sink into that creek than anywhere else at Augusta," Shane explained as they stood on the elevated tee, gazing down at the deceptively small green across the water. "The wind here is notorious. It can change direction between your backswing and impact." Ethan nodded seriously. That's why Angel Cabrera put it in the water in 2013, and Jordan Spieth in 2016, when he was defending champion. Shane raised an eyebrow, genuinely impressed. You really know your Masters history. I've had a lot of time to watch golf tournament, Ethan replied, with the matter-of-factness about his condition that continually caught Shane off guard. Hospital rooms have good TV packages. The moment arrived for Ethan's first attempt. Mark handed him the specially sized 9-iron with the solemnity of a caddy at the Ryder Cup final, quietly murmuring encouragement to his son. Sarah stood back near the medical aide, her hands clasped tightly at her chest, her expression a portrait of complicated emotion, pride, love, and the ever-present knowledge that these memories needed to last a lifetime, compressed into months. Ethan's first swing was valiant, but weak, the ball barely making it off the tee, rolling to a stop well short of Rae's Creek. Frustration flashed across his face. That's just your practice swing, Shane said smoothly. Even Tiger Woods takes a practice swing. The second attempt traveled farther, but veered sharply left. Ethan's shoulders slumped, disappointment evident despite his attempt to hide it. May I make a suggestion? Shane asked, approaching carefully. Let's try something the pros sometimes do in team events. With Mark's help, Shane positioned himself behind Ethan, supporting the boy's frail arm, providing the strength his illness had stolen, while allowing Ethan to maintain the feel of the club and direction of the shot. This one we do together, Shane explained. You provide the heart, I'll help with the power. Their synchronized swing sent the ball soaring in a perfect arc, not with professional distance, but with textbook form, over Rae's Creek, landing softly on the putting surface and rolling to stop just 15 feet from the pin. The shot would have made any golfer proud. The look of pure joy that illuminated Ethan's face transcended everything else about the morning. He turned to his father, whose hands were trembling so badly he could barely keep the smartphone camera steady. Did you see that, Dad? Did you see what we did? Mark nodded, unable to speak through his emotion, the camera momentarily forgotten as he embraced his son. They crossed the famous bridge over Rae's Creek, Shane deliberately slowing their pace. This bridge has felt the footsteps of every great champion modern golf, and now it's feeling yours. On the green, Shane demonstrated the art of reading the subtle slopes that made Augusta's putting surfaces legendary for their difficulty. He showed Ethan how to identify the grain of the grass, how shadows could reveal contours invisible to the untrained eye, how putts at Augusta almost always broke more than they appeared to. For the crucial putt, Shane again helped position Ethan properly, but stepped back to let him execute the final stroke himself. Whether by miracle, the strange magic that sometimes descends on Augusta National, or simply the universe recognizing a moment that transcended sport, the ball rolled true along the line they had chosen together and dropped into the cup with a satisfying rattle. Their small group erupted in cheers that seemed to hang in the morning air, echoing across the otherwise silent course. In that moment, there was no illness, no looming loss, just the pure celebration of athletic achievement, the kind that brings people together in living rooms and sports bars around the world every weekend. As they walked off the green, Ethan's energy was visibly fading, the exertion and excitement taking their toll. He motioned for Shane to come closer, his voice suddenly more serious. Can I tell you the rest of my wish now? Shane knelt beside the boy's wheelchair, suddenly apprehensive. Of course, when you play this hole in the tournament, Ethan said, looking directly into Shane's eyes, I want you to think of me, and I want you to know that even if I'm not here anymore to see it, I'll be watching from somewhere. Mom says I'll have the best view in the house. He paused, swallowing hard, and that's enough for me, just to be remembered by someone like you. The simplicity and selflessness of the wish that his hero would simply remember him while playing broke something open in Shane's heart. This child, facing the end with courage most adults could never muster, wanted nothing more than the assurance that he had made enough of an impression to be carried forward in memory. I can do better than that, Shane promised, an idea forming that would either be his most meaningful gesture or the most controversial move of his career. When I play this hole on Sunday, it won't be just me remembering. I'm going to make sure the whole world knows what you taught me today. What none of them realized as they reluctantly concluded their special morning was how profoundly this hour would change not only the trajectory of Shane's tournament performance, but also the very way he approached both his career and his life beyond golf. Nor could they anticipate how Ethan's simple wish would ultimately touch the wider golf community in ways that would outlive them all. As they parted at the path leading back to the shuttle, Shane pressed something into Ethan's hand, his own official Masters competitor's badge. "Not many people have one of these," he said quietly. "Now you do." Ethan stared at the credential in disbelief. "Won't you get in trouble?" Shane smiled. "They'll issue me another. Some things are worth bending the rules for." What Shane kept to himself was the request he planned to make of Ethan before Sunday's final round. A request for something the boy treasured, which would become part of one of the most memorable moments in Masters history. The Augusta sky on Sunday blazed brilliant blue, the kind of perfect spring day that Masters broadcast directors dream about. Shane Lowry stood just 3 strokes behind the leader, his transformed play throughout the tournament becoming the talk of commentators and fans alike. Whatever Lowry discovered in his preparation this week has rekindled something we haven't seen since his Open Championship victory, remarked lead CBS analyst Jim Nantz. "He's playing with purpose that transcends tournament prizes." In the Reynolds Baltimore home, Ethan reclined in a hospital bed positioned before the television. His condition had deteriorated rapidly. His breathing labored despite supplemental oxygen, yet he remained alert, focused entirely on the tournament, clutching the framed photographs from their Augusta morning that Shane had sent. Professional images capturing moments Mark's smartphone could never have rendered so perfect. "He's going to win," Ethan whispered to his mother, conviction in his voice despite its weakness. Before his round, Shane had carefully placed a small item in his inside jacket pocket. The Baltimore Ravens cap Ethan had worn during their lesson, delivered that morning by courier with a handwritten note. "For luck on 12, I'll be watching from my other favorite spot." The front 9 of Shane's final round became the stuff of highlight reel, precision approaches, clutch putts, strategic brilliance that steadily moved him up the leaderboard. By the time he approached Amen Corner, he had pulled into a tie for the lead. As Shane stood on the 12th tee, he went through his standard preparation. But then he did something unusual. He stepped away from his bag, closed his eyes briefly, and touched the spot inside his jacket where Ethan's cap rested. Lowry, taking an extra moment to center himself at the 12th, Nantz comment. Shane whispered words no microphone could detect. This was for Ethan. His 9-iron shot was nothing short of perfection. The ball rising against the Georgia sky, holding its line against the swirling wind, landing with surgical precision on the green, and spinning back to stop 3 feet from the pin. One of the finest approaches to the notorious 12th seen in recent Masters history. Instead of the customary tip of the cap to acknowledge the gallery's appreciation, Shane reached deliberately into his jacket, removed the Ravens cap, and placed it on his head in place of his own sponsor-emblazoned headwear. And Lowry with, "Well, I'm not sure what we're seeing here," Nantz said, confusion evident in his voice. He's replaced his cap with what appears to be a Baltimore Ravens NFL cap. In the Reynolds' living room, Ethan suddenly became fully alert, his eyes widening in disbelief. "My cap," he gasped, struggling to sit up. "He's wearing my cap." Tournament officials were frantically communicating with each other about the breach of Augusta's strict dress code, but something in Shane's demeanor gave even the most rule-conscious officials pause. Shane calmly sank the birdie putt, moved 1 stroke ahead of the field, and continued his march toward the clubhouse, the Ravens cap firmly in place. By the 18th hole, he had extended his lead to 3 strokes. As his final putt dropped to secure his first Masters victory, Shane dropped to his knees, overcome with emotion that seemed disproportionate even for winning one of golf's most coveted prizes. In the traditional green jacket ceremony at Butler Cabin, the interviewer inevitably asked, "Shane, there's been a lot of speculation about the Baltimore Ravens cap you wore. Can you tell us the significance?" Shane took a deep breath. "I'd like to dedicate this victory to a very special young fan named Ethan Reynolds from Baltimore." His voice was steady until he glanced at his phone, which had vibrated with a message from Sarah Reynolds just before he entered the cabin. He stopped, collecting himself. Ethan passed away during today's round, watching this tournament with his family. He had one wish before he left, and part of that wish was for me to think of him when I played the 12th hole. The cap was his. Shane looked directly into the camera. "To the Reynolds family, if you're watching, Ethan's wish moved me back to the heart of why I play this game. This green jacket belongs to him as much as to me. The story broke wide open in the press conference that followed. Shane revealed the full story, the chance encounter, the early morning lesson at the 12th hole, Ethan's courage and knowledge of the game. "I've been playing professional golf for 15 years, Shane told the assembled media. "I've never been part of anything as meaningful as that hour with Ethan on the 12th hole 5 days ago." In the weeks that followed, the Reynolds family worked with Shane to establish the Ethan Reynolds Golf Foundation, providing golf experiences for children with serious illness. Augusta National made the unprecedented decision to establish an annual Ethan Reynolds Jr. Clinic during Masters Week. At the PGA Championship, a month later, every player in the field wore a small embroidered golden E on their sleeve, a tribute that spread beyond golf to athletes across multiple sports. 6 months after that, Masters Sunday, Shane unveiled a small plaque at Druid Hill Park Golf Course in Baltimore, beside the 12th hole, a public course version of a men corner, dedicated to Ethan's memory. "Professional golfers are often called heroes," Shane said during the simple dedication, "but we're just people who happen to play a game well." Ethan showed true heroism, facing the unimaginable with grace, thinking of others when he had every right to think only of himself, and finding joy in the time he had. In professional sports, where narratives of heroism are often manufactured, the story of Shane Lowry and Ethan Reynolds remained singular, authentic, heartbreaking, and ultimately transcendent. Their brief connection demonstrated how a small act of compassion could create ripples that continued long after both the wish and its fulfillment had passed into memory. Because sometimes the most profound victories happen far from the spotlight, measured not in scoreboards and statistics, but in moments of human connection that remind us why we play games at all. Not for the winning, but for the joy, the shared experience, and the bridges they build between hearts that might otherwise never meet.